Miracles aren't just like sitting out here in the air somewhere, just waiting, all of a sudden they're going to just happen. Like you have to be a creator. You have to help create miracles for others, and others will create miracles for you.
Hey guys, today we have a very sweet and special guest with us. She is Becky Robbins. Becky Robbins believes in constant and never ending improvement. As a co founder of Robbins Research International, she was a pioneer in the self help, personal development, and coaching industry that revolutionized human self improvement on a global scale. If someone asked me to describe Becky in a sentence, I would say she's an explorer of life who makes every day interesting and miraculous. I'm so happy to invite Becky Robbins to the show. Thanks, Becky, for coming to the show.
Hi, how are you? I'm so happy to talk to you. I'm in California, you're in India. This magic that we have created here we are together. Thank
Yes,
you.
Becky. Thank you. I'm so glad to have you. Becky, before we go into the questions, can you say where can people connect with you if they are interested to talk with you?
I have a website that's beckyrobbins.com, easy. And I have Gmail on my website. And so it's all there. It's all easy. I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram name is Everything Becky. Do you know why?
Yeah,
Because because
that's
I'm just interested in so many things, and I want to learn, and I want to create, and I want to do so many different things, and I'm big into helping the world be a better place. So it's called Everything Becky because it couldn't be just one thing.
that's your old website name also, right, Becky?
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So Becky, my first question is: many people think that they are not creative enough. So what do you suggest to them?
Well, you're creative because you were born. That's one thing. You co-created a human body with your mother inside your mother, so you were born that way. Um, I think, and also just that anything that you do in life, you're creating your day. Now, that might not be in a good way. It might
Mm,
be in a different way, and that's up to you to make that happen because we are all our own. Within our own self, we are managing the way that we live our lives, and we get to make those decisions along with whatever spiritual. I believe that I have a spiritual counterpart. I'm a spiritual person also, and so I think I also employ that along with my creativity and being an artist. I wasn't always an artist, so I know
yeah.
what the feeling is of thinking you're not creative, but you just try it and stick with it.
Thank you, Becky. So you believe in moose, right?
Yeah, I do. I
Yeah.
do. I think that's amazing. Tell me more about what you think about that.
Yes, Becky. So I just believe that we are all part of God, right? So that's how we came into this world. So everyone has in it. So for example, in your case, you became an artist. So artist is already there in yourself, right? So you just discovered that. So everyone is creative enough. So that's why I wanted to know your opinion on this, Becky. So how can they bring out their creativity outside?
Well, I'll tell you what is when I first found myself out of my big global business that you just described, and I was trying to figure out what to do with myself that so that I could still have the impact that I had, and also that fulfillment of what I was doing, but I wanted to do something different. So a friend of mine, I ran into her one day, and she had just retired from being an attorney, and I said, tell me what you're doing. And she said, well, I'm taking piano lessons. I'm taking Spanish lessons. I'm taking art lessons. She was all that. And she said, why don't you come with me to an art class? And I said, well, I doubt that I could ever do that. But she said, just come. I don't know how either. In that very first class, BNS, we learned how to draw a straight line, a circle. I mean, it was like the basic stuff. But I don't know, something about that, something about creating something out of nothing, starting with nothing and having it turn into something, even like the circle. And then the teacher showing us how, like, you do a little shading on this part, and all of a sudden it becomes three-dimensional. It looks like
Yes.
something. I was just thrilled by the idea of that. And the challenge of doing something and just playing around. My art right now is very detailed and specific, but if you were to walk down the hallway with me, I have a whole bunch of my first pieces that I did that were just more wild, and I was just playing and having fun and no judgment. And I think that's, but here's another thing I want to say about that is that you can't just try something once or twice and then quit because it's not good. I also would like to learn to play the guitar, and I have a guitar, but I'm terrible at it, and I will always be terrible at it unless I commit to a certain amount of time and go through the painful learning process of especially that because your fingers hurt and all of that. But it's a must that you stick with something. You have to dare to be terrible at first.
Absolutely agree with that, Becky. Thank you for answering that. Becky, my next question is you have a love affair with the planet Earth, right? So, can you tell what it means?
But the planet Earth,
Yeah.
I love of the planet Earth. Um,
Yes.
I have been. I was born in a state called Colorado, and there's mountains and lakes and rivers, and my parents were outdoor people, so I've been like an outdoor girl my whole life. I love being outside, which is funny that I have a studio that's indoors. Someday I'll have a studio that has big open doors to the outside. But I think that I have a reverence for this planet, and I one of my art pieces is called Pale Blue Dot, and that my art comes as it just starts coming through, and a certain amount of months into the process because they take so long, they start to have a story, and they kind of tell me what they're about. And one of my most popular pieces of art that I just described is called Pale Blue Dot, and that came from Carl Sagan. And someone told me I actually cried when I heard this the first time because there was a Voyager spacecraft that there were two of them, and they were taking all the pictures, of space. And Carl Sagan was at NASA when they were out. One of the Voyagers was out, and they were going to untether that, like unhook it from the controls, keeping it in a
Yes.
circling the Earth. They're going to let it go out to deep space. And he asked them, would you please turn it around one last time and take a picture of Earth before it's too far away to get the picture? And they said, no, it's too late. He said, just do it. And they did. And there's a photograph you can find. And there's this beautiful, like, it's all black. And there's just a tiny little stream of light that was just barely whatever was left over from the sun. It's kind of a grainy photograph. And there's the tiniest little dot. And they even took a graphic artist, put a little arrow by it so you wouldn't miss it. And he called that Pale Blue Dot, and he wrote about it, like maybe 3 paragraphs that are so beautiful about this is everything that's ever happened to you, BNS, to me, to our countries, to our planet, to from miracle of childbirth to the shooting a rocket in space, and all of that happened right there on that tiny little dot. And here we are, and I have so much love for this little pale blue dot that I get to have the privilege of living on. And it starts there, and most of my art has sacred geometry in it, and sacred pieces
Yes.
of things that mean a lot to me.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Becky, you have traveled across the globe, right? So, what do you learn that's not generally covered in the news?
Well, I don't watch the news so much,
Okay.
and it doesn't support me in watching too much of the news or anything. I'm careful about what I put in my brain because it it like I don't watch things that are violent. I don't listen to the news that's violent, and that doesn't mean that I don't care, because I do, and of course I know what's going on in the world. But in addition to that, um, it's the connection with the people. It's the connection with the people, and meeting the people, not like in a insulated hotel, where you're not going to have the true experience of a culture, like in your spectacular country, like going from. I mean, we created our agenda to go. Our itinerary to go through India in a very specific way, so that weren't just trying to hit every big city and then you don't even get to know anything about the people. And so that's, to me, that's what makes me want to travel, is that. And then also to share a meal, share a story, like really have like cross-cultural communication, between people. And I want more of that. I think that it adds to the richness of life. And I also think, I've said for a long time that I think peace on earth starts with people traveling to other countries and having that kind of knowledge.
Yes, Becky. Becky, you call India as Mother India, right? Can you talk about that?
Boy, the first time I came to India, I landed there and I was all by myself when I landed until you come out of the throng of people. And it's the middle of the night. And I walked out. This was in Chennai where I landed. And I walked out and it was the middle of the night. And there were thousands of people that are all there to greet their loved ones and so happy. I mean, I think India is a happy country. And that's one thing. And then a friend of mine whose son was doing a documentary for BBS she was British, and her son did this documentary. And I think it was called Welcome to India, and had 2 parts or 3 parts or something. And I saw that, and it just like the I have such respect for the people in India, from the things that just the hardship and being so resourceful to figure anything out, to the artisanship, like the spectacular handwork and the love of beauty and creativity, and also the reverence for one another. It's kind of like a spiritual invisible thread that runs through the country, that you can feel it. And I mean, there's so much I love about India that I'm so happy I'm coming back.
Yes, Becky's so excited, and we'll cover about that soon. So, Becky, let's go to your art a little bit. So, can you tell me how did Ernst Heckel impacted you?
You've done your homework, my friend.
Of course.
Someone told me to read a book about him, and the whole thing was his life was he was like an early explorer in the 1800s, late 1700s, 1800s. And that means that he had to travel all over the world and between continents on a big wooden boat. So he didn't have all the technology. He was seasick all the time, and he had to put up with all of that. And then he wanted to bring back samples of wildlife and samples of plant life and under the sea and in everything. He was so curious, and I love that. And there weren't big fancy cameras. He didn't have a big film crew with him, right? So he had to go and find all that stuff and draw it out and
Mhm.
make little pictures. And I mean, he had such a compulsion to do that. And then of course he was these trips are financed by the royalty of Spain or Prussia or wherever, at the time. So then the pressure was on him to bring that back. And there's actually a museum somewhere I think it's in the Netherlands, that has
Oh,
has a bunch of his stuff in it. But there are several books that I've got and they're so detailed. And I think that when I'm painting one of my version of things, because usually they're like a sketch, they're not colored, and so I do my own version of that. And you know what? I just feel a respect for someone who would have that. Here I am today in 2022, almost 23, and that, however many years that is, like 500 years later, for this guy that did that. And I feel like I'm kind of like paying tribute to somebody who cared so much about, like, once again, about this little pale blue dot we live on, that he wanted to share with people who would never see these kinds of things in their lifetime. That's part of it.
yes, Becky. Thank you for sharing that. Becky, can you explain what is Eugen and how can we understand it outside the context of art? I mean, can we apply it in our daily life?
I love that question. um, I found this word. It's spelled Yugen. I'm sure I don't know how exactly it's pronounced. Gonna
Eugen.
have to ask Mahler, yeah. But the idea of that was that, and there are a couple different definitions, but the one that I love the most that I applied to my art is that something that evokes an emotion that's too powerful for words. And I think that art can be that you can stand in front of. I'm looking at around here. I've got so many of my originals in this room, and there's a power that they have that each one's different. And so that I think is amazing. The second part of your question, I mean, just imagine if we went around, just like, for example, a tree. There's so much about trees that we're now starting to learn about, how they communicate with other trees under the ground, how they even trees that are not even in their species, how they are able to diagnose something's wrong and send some kind of a nutrient to a neighboring tree, or there's a mother tree in a forest. I mean, like that kind of a thing. Like the roots are deep under the ground, but they're giving nourishment to the highest top leaf in the tree. And then there's, you could stand there and be in that state of Eugen, or however it's pronounced, for a long time, right? I mean, that's why I love art so much, is that something will just come to me, an idea like that. I'm funny enough, I'm actually painting a tree right now.
Oh,
You know, it's
nice.
on my the current piece I'm doing, and it's I get to have that great feeling all the time.
Yes, Becky. Like it sometimes happens when we meet certain people also, right? So whatever they do, we get some kind of feeling inside us that we can't express in our speech. So yes, like when I was researching about you, like when I looked up the word Eugen, like literally there are so many documentaries about Eugen. I watched some of them, and it was like it's like in the night if we see moon, sometimes we get certain feeling, right? So everything. So yeah, that's thank you for that word actually, uh,
Oh, thank you
Becky.
for reminding me about it, because now when it's sort of like in the book of being, I mean, being is everything. Like, who are you being, and what is stimulating that? And now you're reminding me of that, because when I'm being curious, which is part of what I have in my document, when I'm being curious, and and I'm very curious, and when I'm being kind, you know, kind to nature, when I'm being both of those things, I mean, it changes my whole, changes everything. When I'm even looking at the miraculousness of things and wondering how that could even happen, sometimes that even happens to me after I finish a piece of art, or I look at it a few months later and wonder how did I do that? I wonder if I could even do that again. it's it's just an amazing feeling, isn't it?
Yes, Becky. Becky, my next question is: should we be protective of the environment that we choose?
Protective of it.
Yes.
I think if we want to continue to have, well, you know, you could be talking about like the environment within my studio here. That's one thing, or the environment of my home, or the environment of my neighborhood. And if you're talking about the environment within my own home, that I consider my house to be a sacred space, because I keep it that way. Like I have my, I'm a meditator, and we talked a little bit before before we
Yes.
came online about about various ways of getting yourself into your body, mind, and spirit into a place where you're enhancing what you're doing within your body. So you could even call that my inner environment, my outer environment. I'm committed to that, because uh, this this lifetime is infinite and also brief, and we
Yes.
never know where that's going to be. So for me to walk down into my living space where I have music playing tonight, when I walk down there, it'll be, there's a candle lit and there's music, and I do it for myself, you know, to create that space that I have peace and, you know, peacefulness in my heart, or I stimulates creativity, because creativity happens to me all the time.
Yes.
I have a friend, actually the friend is the guy who wrote the book about Steve, Alan D. Thompson. And he asked me one time, he said, Becky, do you like get, and I think this is exactly what, not exactly, but this is the essence of what he said, is how do you get into that space of creativity? Do you like have like a muse, or do you have like what how do you get into that space? And I thought about it for a second. I thought, wow, I don't try to get into that space. I just have, I it just comes through me. I mean, I feel like someone's kind of pushing me on my back a little bit, like, because there's so much that wants to come through, that I'm just kind of holding it back, like a like a bunch of a herd of horses, you know, like that, just like trying to get out. So, but that only happens because I'm being careful of the environment that I create
Mm.
within me, around me, even people that I hang out with,
Yes,
all
Becky.
that.
Becky, it's like it happens when we are open to it, right? So many people close themselves and don't let it pass through, channelize. So even choosing the environment we are in is like opening ourselves to whatever that's coming. Yeah.
Right, right. And also having the intention, what is your intention? Like
Yes.
what is the intention that you have? I have to say that I've never been stronger in my really focused intention for my life than having read the Book of Being and working with Steve Hardison, because and other people that are involved in this beautiful movement, because it really isn't only about yourself. In fact, it's like, who are you being in the world? Who am I being unto myself, like in my home, but who am I being unto a stranger, a neighbor, even someone that I normally wouldn't even talk to or be
Yes.
around, but who am
Yes.
I being all the time? What is my intention for my life that is going to cause me to have the kind of reverence for myself as I go through my life and for others? And what does that end up looking like? Am I contributing to the greater good by my energy, or am I contributing something that's negative to the greater good by how I'm not being aware of how I'm being?
Yes, Becky, and we'll go deep into that a little bit soon. So, before that, I just want to ask you this question. I'm very curious about this. You have been meditating your like from a long time, right, Becky? So, what did you learn by doing meditation every day?
Wow. For the very first time I started meditating was I learned transcendental meditation. And then I learned from Deepak Chopra the ways, his ideas about meditation, which I love. Deepak, we're friends. And and now I'm doing a little bit of a different version of everything, a little bit of everything,
Yes.
all my own kind of thing. Many things come from that. One is health wise. I mean, I have your nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic, they're kind of in harmony then. So you're in a place of harmony, what physically.
Yes.
Mentally, I feel like it's kind of like worship for me. Like I do the way I'm doing it now is I do the heart math. I get
Mhm.
into the heart and the coherence between head and heart, which is you get the EEG waves that are measurable and your heart waves. And there's a beautiful little gadget that you can get from heartmath.com. And you just clip one end here and one on your lapel, and you do a breathing exercise, and at the end of that, you can turn that off and you can just fall into the deepest, most beautiful silent meditation. That works for me. And the benefit, I think, of all of those is that we live in a world that's, I mean, I live in California. It's not quiet here. I mean, I live by the beach. So that's a little better, but then I get in a car and I've been in India, so I know, what I'm talking about. But and I need to have a level of calm and focus
Mm.
when I'm doing those things. And also, I'm involved in lots of different projects right now that I'm committed to and that I want to do my best at. So I think it's giving me so much, both peace of mind and focus. And also, I mean, I'm not just like this peaceful walking around person all the time. I mean, it's fun to have fun with people, and then I'm more joyful. I don't know, like everything's happening for me in this way.
Yes, Becky, I understand that. It's like it's a little bit of solitude is required for creativity to boost in, right? So exactly, meditation helps us to do that, to be with our own thoughts actually, instead of being responsive to all other people. Yes. Thank
And
you.
also to be with no thought for a little while.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah. Instead of my head, all these little, like the images that want to be painted, or I've got so many books I want to read and so many people that I would love to spend time with. It's like, okay, quiet all that down. Take a little time, so that you can be calm. Yeah.
What is the book that you are reading presently now, Becky?
The book I'm reading right now, that I read all the time actually, is the Book of Being, which is called The Ultimate
That
Coach.
coach.
And I'll tell you why, because I've read it several times. And every time I read it, or I turn to a page, which I've underlined a lot of things, and that's how I like to read my books. And I also have the Audible version. I hear something different. And I'll tell you why that works for me. It works for me also, like in my art. I will work from a photograph that I've, different kinds of photographs that I've merged together or whatever I've done, and then I'm painting from that. So I have the photograph here, and then I'm painting, and every time I go back to my painting, I see something I hadn't seen before. I'll see something in that photograph that like I hadn't seen, and never even saw it. It's just like the more I get into it, the more I see, and I think the book is the same way. And so I'll listen to it while I'm driving in my car, being focused, driving in my car, and just have that going on. And then I'll hear something and be, oh my gosh, that is so amazing to me. And then I'll figure out how to apply it in my life. Like the one that came up for me yesterday was about putting someone on a pedestal. Like we're putting people on a pedestal all the time. And that's lovely because we're acknowledging people. But then in addition to that, there can be like a kind of a thing about it. It must be nice to be them. That amazing person we've put up on that pedestal. It must be nice to be them. I wish I was like that.
Mm.
But built into that is a feeling of you're not enough. You're not on that pedestal. So you're kind of like keeping yourself down by doing that. So I I like learning that I have that I am made of God, as I say in my document, and everyone is the same. And I think that we all have a capability to do different things. We're all built differently, but um, so that's the book I'm reading, and that's what's happening to me.
Thanks, Becky. Becky, what does inverted ego mean?
That's something that came to me from meeting the guy who wrote the book Heart Math, Doc Childra.
Oh,
And I was there, had the privilege of going into his it's a big barn on his property, and you can go there in the middle of the night. A group like all hung out with him, and I asked him a question that seems foolish to me now, but I was back, that is where I was at the time, but I've remembered the lesson from it. And I said, I really would like to write a book, but I can't. I just, for some reason, I'm just not writing the book. I'm not focused enough, or I'm feeling like why should I write a book? There's so many books already in bookstores. And he said, Becky, that's an example of inverted ego. Like your ego playing tricks on you so that you won't do it.
oh.
So yeah, I learned from that.
Thanks, Becky. And Becky, you and Tony are literally the founders of coaching industry. What is your opinion on coaching industry now? Everyone is coaching these days, right? So what's your opinion on that?
I think a couple things about that. I think that you're right. There are so many different coaching things, and I think it's wonderful for people who would like to learn more. Like I wanted to learn more about heart math, and so I heard about Julie, so I contacted her, and it was fantastic for me to once a week I met with her, and she was teaching me all the science of it, because I love science and I love learning, and I said I want this part, so she tailored it to me, for that way, and I was responsible to be on the phone when I said I would be there with her.
Mm.
So I think that's a great thing about being able to have so many kinds of specialized coaches in the world today. Um, the other thing I think is important, though, is that there are a lot of coaches that I think that a different kind of coaching, like you could have like a music coach or something like that, is a different thing than somebody who's going to really do deep, deep work on an issue. And for me, having been at the very beginning of the coaching movement, we were very, very diligent about making sure that people who wanted to be a coach, first of all, had what it takes to be someone like that, because not everybody has that.
Mm.
And also, if you haven't done the work, you don't deserve to be a coach. This is also, I heard this in the car on from the Ultimate Coach book. Like you're going to somebody you want them to help you make money, and yet they haven't made money themselves. So how could they coach you in that way? But even a more serious thing, I want to say this because I think it's really important, is that for somebody who's got some issues that they really want to deal with, and most of us have something, but something that's very serious. I think that going to someone who deserves and has earned the right, somebody who's completely, totally earned the right to be in that venue, who can help someone get to the bottom of something and then help put them back together again. I say it's like help them understand and be better when they walk out of there than when they come in there. So I'm be really picky about who I chose to be a coach.
Becky, your art is going to the moon, right? So can you tell us like how did it happen?
I mean, isn't that crazy?
Yes.
I mean, I was telling another person that I didn't try and make that happen. I mean, I don't even know how you would try and make that happen. But I got a phone call. It was telling me, guess what? Your art is going to the moon. So how that happened, and it's not there yet, but it's going in a year from November. So
Oh.
like 11 months from now. And I was there was a company in Australia who came here, and they were doing a show called Color in Your Life, and it was a television show. So they interviewed several artists from different places around the world, and they came here and they interviewed me here in my studio and watched me paint, and we spent the day talking with one another. So then that became a 30-minute television show that they, with other shows that happen around the world. And so there is an endeavor to put man back on the moon. I think in 2025 or 2024, they're going to put man back on the
Yes.
moon. And so a physicist that's associated with that decided that he would like to put a representation of art and music. And I'm not sure if there's anything else of that. Yeah, writing. I know that because Alan D. Thompson's book is also going to the
Ooh.
moon. We didn't even know each other yet when we found that. What? That? You too? Me too. Anyway, so my art is being sent in a nickel plated time capsule aboard a lunar landing module. Those lunar landing modules have been going up there they've been going up there, and then they land and stay there, and I guess they're taking along all the equipment and whatever the scientists who are going to astronauts and scientists are going to go up there and do with it all. So it's really fun for me to even consider that my actual art is going to the moon. That's
That's
crazy.
that's awesome. Like if someone asks where is your art, you can point out to the moon. It's there.
Yeah. I'll tell you where it is. It's on this it's called some south node of the moon or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
So cool.
it's so cool, Becky. Becky, you have a document where you wrote that you are an intrepid explorer of life and the beneficiary of the majesty of my creator, right? Can you tell us about your document and what does that mean and how can one make their own document?
Wow. The document is a creation, like a miraculous creation by Steve Hardison. And I think it's kind of the opposite of an affirmation, which we've all heard of for
Yes.
years and years, right? The the whole idea of it is to look at the parts of your life that you're having issues in, and maybe things you've believed for years, or the things that you've been told, and growing up, and all of those kinds of the drama and trauma and all of that kind of stuff, and just get this is all in the book, by the way, and then you can get your list of all of that. But then the magic starts to happen, because you it doesn't make any sense to just say, I'll tell you one of mine in the beginning is I felt like I was irrelevant, like leaving a big giant global company. And then all of a sudden I'm like, now what do I do with myself? I felt kind of like I don't, not that it was an ego thing about like I don't matter, but about like just like, wow, what am I going to do with myself now? And am I enough, and all of that. And you can't just say then, okay, well, I'm going to say to myself, I do matter, I am enough, because your brain is going to say that's nonsense, that doesn't work that way. So you go in circles, and I think that it hurts people to go at something that they think they've been promised that you're going to get a result that way. So the middle part of that is forgiving yourself for judging yourself as being irrelevant, or that you don't matter, because I have no right to judge myself. I'm here being as much as I can be with what I've learned, like I'm working hard on myself. And after that, after the forgiveness part, is then what is the truth about me? And the truth about me after that was like I feel like I'm irrelevant, and I forgive myself for judging myself as not enough. And the truth of me is I belong here. I belong here. I'm unique. I'm made of God. I belong here. And that is like a tiny little bit of information about the document. And I think that I do think it deserves a tremendous amount of time and focus to do something like that. And then after you have it, it's not like carved on a tablet for life, right? It's like something that you want to have it be so much a part of you. It's so much a part of me. The last thing I do before I go to sleep at night is recite my document unto myself. I've recorded it into my phone, and the very first thing, I don't even turn the lights on or get out of bed or anything, it's the very first thing I do. And then during the day, I want to be living it. I don't want it just to be something that's framed on the wall. I want to know it, and I want to notice when I'm not doing it. You know, like if my document also includes a part in there where I say I'm devoted to the care of my temple, meaning my physical
Yes.
body, and I stand inside a living miracle. Well, that's beautiful, but if I don't take care of it, now I'm not doing, I'm not doing what I promised myself to do. And that was hard won, going through all the things that I went through, all that long list, all the forgiveness part, coming up with this beautiful document. And if I don't do it, it's kind of, it's sort of like, I'm not going to say it's worse than if you never heard of it, but like you could really put yourself into a not great place if you have to be devoted and committed to your own personal growth and your spiritual growth.
Yes, Becky. And Becky, I think now the next question will make a lot of sense. And I think this is the perfect time to ask you how to create an identity again, how to move into the right direction when we feel lost or when we feel that our previous identity is not us anymore.
I can only speak from my own personal experience. I think that um, I believe that I'm guided in my life. I believe I have strong spiritual guidance. I don't know. I have not always followed that guidance. I mean, I've not listened to my intuition sometimes when it would have been so much more important and better for me to do something different or handle a situation differently, and I avoided it. So I think that first comes guidance, listening to your guidance, and there's in my life, BNS, there have been like my life is kind of cyclical. I have like beginnings and middle and end. And when it's done, it's done. And it's not always a bad thing. It's even like a painting. Like when it's done, is it's done. Like even or where you live or in a relationship or in a business. And then it could also be something else. But my life is like that. So I'm not saying it was easy, but once I, realized that I was going to create my life and redefine myself, having no idea what that was going to be like. I remember one day, this is so personal of a question, but thank you for asking it because I think we all can relate to it. And like I remember one time my son and his girlfriend walked in the door of this little house I was renting, and there was a little cassette tape I'd stuck in this stereo system,
Use
and it
me.
was from this wonderful church up in Los Angeles, and it was kind of a non-denominational church, and there's beautiful people in there, and there was a song called "Use Me." And the lyrics were beautiful, and the whole congregation would sing that, and it was emotional because you're just asking God to use you, like even if you don't know for what, like use you. And part of the lyrics were like, like these are my hands, like use my hands. And I was at that part of the song, like crying and singing and like use me. And my son walked into the door, and I think he probably was like backed out of the door, like never mind. But I had that strong desire to for God to use me with everything I know and everything I've learned, and who am I to be now? Who am I to be? And then I tried some different things, like I've already mentioned, and I still am doing that. I'm not ever going to be done. I mean, the identity I have now is like I believe I know who I am now. I know that I'm like my document has a lot of that in it, but I know who I am and who I'm being, but I'll never stop changing. I'm always going to be growing. I think that helps than not being like something's then completely done, and now you're just like, oh my God, what am I going to do with myself?
Thank you for sharing that, Becky. Actually, like many people are in such a lost situation that someone else's journey will always help them to overcome their thing. So really, I appreciate this answer. Thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. So Becky, you know everything about coaching and you helped thousands of people to become coaches, right? So how did you meet Steve Hardison and what made you to take his coaching despite like producing so many coaches yourself?
that's, that's great. Well, I had a big knee surgery, BNS,
Yeah.
and I was kind of like captive, right?
Mm.
So I was recovering from that, and a friend of mine came, like, insisted that she come and help me. And she walked in the door, and she had this book with her, and it was that book, the
Yeah.
Ultimate Coach book. And she said, like, well, you just like lay here and you just heal, and I'm going to be here reading, so I'm going to read this book, and while I'm here, I'm going to write a document. And I had no idea what she's talking about. But as she kept talking about the book, we decided I'd order my own. So I ordered it from Amazon. Amazon promptly delivered it, and I started reading it. And um, there was one story in the book that made me cry, and I was I was so overwhelmed by that. And I said to her, like, "Oh my gosh, I think I have to meet this guy." And she said, "You know, I actually know somebody who might be able to make that happen for you." And I thought, "Wow, really? Oh, that would be amazing." So I think maybe it was a while after that. I mean, not too long, but anyway, I did email him and see, and he did call me,
Oh,
and it was the most. I know it was like that. What you just did was like that for me too. Like when I saw that name come up on my phone, Steve Hardison, I still feel that way when he calls me, which is not frequently, but when I see his name on there, I just feel like, oh my God, this is so cool. Because you're right. You know, with my experience with the whole coaching thing, I never in a million years thought I would hire a coach. And I hadn't met Julie yet either. But I don't even think Steve is a coach. I think he's like the world's greatest mentor. I mean, he coaches me, tells me, gives me ideas, but he also challenges me in the most amazing ways, and always like things that I really need to take a serious look at, like taking a stand for something, taking a stand for myself in my life, or agreements. So, I mean, I remember one session we had where he was talking about keeping agreements, and I said, you know what, I'm good with that because I don't lie. I keep my if I say I'm going to do something, I keep my word. And he goes in a deeper way of that. Like anything you say you're going to do, even unto yourself. Like I'm going to clean out my closet. You know, it's like, well, then quit saying it to myself if I'm not going to do it because there's a cost to that. So the more that's why I said early on, like I read that book a lot and I listen to it in my car because I'm always getting coaching from it. Something will come up because I'm in a new place now than I was 3 or 4 months ago. I'm I'm on a fast track right now. But I also want to say this is that you mentioned a lot of people are going through stuff right now, and we've never been in history at a time like we are in right now, where there is like the great awakening or whatever you want to call it. It's painful, and it's a good thing, I think, because I mean, if you look at what's bubbling up to the surface, there's corruption is bubbling up to the surface, things that people feel have not happened in their culture or racially, or there's so much going on in the world right now, and we need to care for one another. We need to care for one another. And I remember listening to a beautiful video where Amy Hardison, Steve's wife, was speaking in London. And I had just done it was the beginning of doing my document. And one of the things I wrote in my document was, I belong here, which was good for me to write in my document
yes.
because I needed that right then, right? And I still love saying that because now what it means to me is I belong here right now. I belong right here in this moment with you doing this video. There's no other place to be. And I also belong here on this, like at this particular time on planet Earth with all the things that are going on. And I want to be equipped to do what I'm here to do and how I can do it because we belong to one another. We
Yes.
belong to one another. So I could talk for an hour about this.
Yeah, I understand
I'm going
that.
to let you tell me the next thing.
Yeah, I will ask you that. And actually, I have observed this same thing about Steve Hardison, Becky. Like, I have a friend called Emily Penton. She was the one who made me to like discover Steve Hardison. And once people know Steve, they become such a force for good that they just want others to know about him. Like, you have to, like, you must. So it's like once we know about him, we just discover ourselves better. I think that's what is happening. So yeah, like I know exactly how you feel. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Becky, I know you have answered it a while ago, but I just want to ask you a little bit more specific. How to choose the right coach for us or right mentor? Like how to choose one?
Well, I would want to know who he coached or she coached. I'd want to have be able to talk to those people. I would do my homework.
Hmm.
I would not just take someone's word for it. I would want to know what are their specialties, what is the exact specialty, and I'd want to know their background. Like, how do they earn the right to tell me what to do in that context? Because a general coach, you know, I think that I would want to know that, and I'd want to know how many years they're doing it. I'd want to know how successful they are at doing it. I mean, I know those would be personal questions to ask someone, but if I'm going to hire them, they should tell me those. They should tell me
Yes.
the answers to those personal questions.
Yeah.
That's a start.
Yeah. And that's a very good start. Thank you.
And the other thing I would like to say is I know that some coaches make you sign like a year long contract or something.
Yes.
I did not do that with Steve. What I did with Steve is he has a first session with you. He calls it being with. You pay
Mm.
for it,
Mm.
but you get to go there and you get to see, and he gets to see, is this a fit?
Oh.
So I would do that too before I would sign on with someone for a length of time and pay for it. And of course, after that, it was an absolute yes, no matter what for me. So but I would. That's the first things I would say.
Thank you, Becky. Becky, what are the right qualities one should possess to become a superstar coach? Like, I just wanted to ask you this.
A superstar coach. Well, first of all, you have to start at the beginning. So remember, I said already, you're going to suck at the beginning of anything you do.
Yes.
So I think that if I were gonna, someone said to me, "Why aren't you a coach?" the other day. I thought, like, how would I be a coach? For God's sake, how would I be a coach? Like, what would I do even? And so I think, first of all, I would do. I would start figuring like, where am I qualified?
Mm.
Like, I'm qualified to talk to somebody about creativity and about doing art and that kind of a thing. Um, I would find it like that's what I would do. Some self exploration is to have I all the things that I think I would inform someone about, have I been there? Because I want to know I would want to know that I could handle anything. So remember, I said you have to start out at the beginning of everything, is you're going to be bad at it. So then I think I would have a couple of, I would, ask for a couple of strangers, not friends, because they're not going to tell you the truth, but some strangers, that would give you feedback. And then it's a matter of putting in the time. I think it's a matter of really putting in the time and training, and go get training from. There are some really spectacular coaches in this network. I don't know any other coaches in any other network that I would trust with the kind of information. And I know a lot of these, as you call them, superstar coaches. I haven't been coached by them, but I'm just watching how they are and how they are in the community and how they are at reaching out with one another and helping one another. And I mean, I'm talking to some of these people like every day, every other day, who are really successful coaches, and who every time you talk to someone, they say like, is there anything I can help you with? I was talking to a man yesterday. He's outside of this whole group of people. He's a man in California who's really trying to help the African American community, and he's a hip hop artist, and he's
Mm.
like well known, and he's also well educated, articulate, and he wants to help his whole community. And so as I was talking to him, I says, "Is there anything I can do to help you?" And he said, "Oh my God, do you know that no one in my whole life has ever asked me that?" So I think get involved with a group of people who are all really have the highest standards that will tell you the truth. And then you just start building from there. And then the word of mouth will spread, and
Yes.
you will, and that's how it happens. I mean, it's always how it's happened for me in my whole life in every context.
Yes, Becky, I understand that. I totally agree with that. Becky, what are the top two lessons that you learned from Steve Hardison? If you have to choose two, top two.
Wow, you should have given me warning on this because there's so many.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see. Top two. I think I think being impeccable with your integrity is huge. That means keeping your word no matter what you say you do, and you're just squeaky clean. There's nothing out of whack with you. That you've cleaned up everything that you need to clean up, and you don't create any more issues. That's one. And the second thing is that I'm just now learning from him, and how fun it is to participate in creating miracles. Because he said to me when I was with him last, he said, miracles aren't just like sitting out here in the air somewhere, just waiting. All of a sudden, they're going to just happen. Like, you have to be a creator. You have to help create miracles for others, and others will create miracles for you. He said, you just watch. So he was telling a story to me that had just happened to him about he was walking down this long road where he'd never been on this road before. He left his car, wait, like an hour ago, parked somewhere, and he was walking down this long road, and he happened to be beside two fences that were like parallel and like next to each other, and over the top of those was razor wire, the kind of wire that's in a prison. And he started talking to this gentleman who was one of the inmates, and it was a halfway house, so it was like after prison comes this, where you're still captive there. And the guy was gonna try and play basketball, and Steve just struck up a conversation with him through the fence. And the guy just really didn't want anything. It was like, who are you? And Steve just kept at it. He didn't, like, all of a sudden, but he just wanted to. He goes out with that in his mind every day, that he's going to add value to the world somehow. So after that, Steve told him about the book, and he said, if you promise to read it. So Steve said, okay, well, I promised to come back. So that meant Steve had to walk an hour back to his car, drive to his house, drive back from his house, and walk back down this road. And he got to the front where then the security people let him in, and he delivered that book to that guy. And that guy, this has only been like a week ago that this all happened.
Yes.
And he told me about it while I was sitting that afternoon in his office for my time with Steve. And then he said, oh, would you like to be part of this miracle? And I said, sure. So he said, okay. So he pulls out his phone and he starts calling him. This guy's name is Freddie. So he starts calling him while I'm sitting there. And he says, Freddie, I have somebody here you might want to talk to. Her name is Becky Robbins. And he hands me the phone. And then he said, I'm going to step out for a minute and you guys can talk. And this guy was blown away that I would be there talking to him. And then Steve had a bunch of us all call and talk to him. And I got in touch with my old friend, Dog the Bounty Hunter, which is a whole
Yes.
story from and got Dog to call him. I mean, it's just been like one of those kinds of things, where when you go through a day and it's like that you feel that you are really creating magic in the world. And don't we all need a little bit of that right now? I mean,
Yes.
I just feel like if we could all just go out and start doing that for one another and remember that we belong to each other,
Mm.
I mean, it's beautiful.
Just listening to that made me feel so good, actually, Becky. So Steve is awesome, I know that. So thank you for sharing that story, Becky. So Becky, what is your best advice for the young generation?
Um, I think they have a lot to teach us, honestly. I do. I think that my advice would be to help them understand that they too have guidance, that we adults aren't the only smart ones, in the room, but that they have their own guidance that comes through, and for them to create some solitude to be able to listen, so they have some quiet time,
Mm.
and also get time off of all of the devices and all of that. I think is really hard for young people because they've grown up with that. So the other thing would be is to engage in actual conversations with actual people. Because
Yes.
I mean, while you and I can't sit in front of each other truly right this minute, we're doing the best we can. But I wouldn't want to stay in all the time and only do this, because we need to be touched and loved and hugged and told we matter. And I think that's like a huge thing that I think parents are having a hard time knowing, like, how do I connect with this kid? This kid is kind of like blocking me out. I think we need to all of us together, like come together. I hope that some young people come to this event, this one of a kind event that's going to happen in Mumbai, because I love children and I love young people, and it's just fun to have conversations with them on a level that's respectful to them.
Yes, Becky. And I just want to ask you this. So, Steve always asks you to be a part of a miracle. Like, would you like to be a part of miracle, right? So, I think this Mumbai event is also such kind of thing, right? So, can
Definitely.
you, yeah, can you tell us like what made you to come to Mumbai in February?
Well, first of all, I love Mother India, right?
Yes.
And here's the thing: is that Ranjan invited me to come to India, and I said, "Give me a couple of days. Let me just think about this," because it wasn't in my plan to go to India in February.
Mhm.
And I also knew at the time that Steve wasn't going to do that, because he doesn't need adulation. He doesn't need to be the superstar guy. He's so humble, and he's so kind, and he's just like the book. He didn't want a book. He didn't want to write a book. He doesn't need a lot of media attention. Doesn't need to be on stage speaking all over the world. He's different.
Yes.
When they finally said he was going to come, Ranjan called me and he said, "Would you have you thought about coming?" I said, "Yes, I'm coming." And then he said, "Would you be a speaker?" I went, "What? Oh my gosh. Okay." So of course I'm going to say yes to him. So, and Ankush, my other, friend, and
Yes.
I'm just hoping that so many people in India take advantage of this opportunity that may never happen again, to have Steve there and Amy there, because I can't wait to be in front of them and see how they are, because I've not witnessed that. I wasn't in London. So it's a it's like seeing it's like an opportunity. The miracle part of it is that no one's going to leave there the same as when they walked in. I mean, to have the experience of being around this caliber of human, Steve, Amy, the various people are going to speak, Ankush, they're it's like Alok, Gary Mahler. I mean, these are, like you said, superstars. These are the superstars, but not just because they're great coaches and make a lot of money. It's because they have a huge heart, and they also are very powerful people. So I feel like humble and grateful and excited to be part of that group and see whatever I can contribute.
Yes, Becky, and we are so excited to see you as well. I'm like totally excited to meet you guys. That's I will be there for sure. Becky, my last question of the day. Um, what is your summary of the Ultimate Coach book? Your summary.
My summary. My summary. Let me have a drink of water.
Yes, please.
The summary of the book to me would be: here's a story written about someone who's the most unique individual I've ever met. And I've met a lot of them in my lifetime. And someone who's had, like what I was mentioning earlier about coaches, like he's gone through horrible situations in his life and has extreme situations in his childhood and in his early life, and overcame that somehow miraculously. And his every waking moment is spent improving people's lives, doing whatever he can to help other people. He's deeply caring. He prays and meditates, and you're going to get to, in that book, there are many stories from lots of different people, since he didn't write the book, since Alan Hardison, Alan wrote the book, Alan Thompson wrote the book about him. Alan got to interview all these people for hundreds of hours and distilled into it little stories of all these people who actually got to meet Stephen and have a great experience, being mentored by him. And so, I mean, you're saying, like, how do you find a coach? I mean, my gosh, in a lot of those people that were mentored by Steve are now spectacular coaches, including the ones that are going to be speaking on stage. And so if I were somebody who wanted to be a coach, or even if I were, like, I didn't want to be a coach, and my life is forever changed for doing this, but I would come to that event to witness what it takes to live a life like that is just without folly. I mean, there's these people are like incredibly powerful, but good people. Like, there's no lack of the integrity is intact. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's so important to me. I mean, I can't be around anybody who doesn't have that. So, as a role model for me, or even how I want to be in the world. So, by the time you get to the back of the book, you want to go back and read it again, because in the beginning when I read it, it was like I don't need to know. I'm looking for what's the good part. Like, I don't need to read about the childhood part. Like, get me to the good part, and then I would go back and read that. And now when I remember reading it one day when I was on my way to I fly to meet Steve in Arizona, and I fly back, and I was reading a part of that book and about his childhood, and then when I sat down in front of him, I started to cry. Because here I'm sitting in front of this person that's gone through so much, and he is so loving and kind and powerful and miraculous and honest. And wow, I mean, I don't think that comes along in a lifetime very often. I don't think you meet somebody like that or have an experience like that.
Yeah. Yes, Becky. Lotus comes or grows from mud, not on marble, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Becky, for coming to the show and helping us. We will be so happy to meet you and Steve and Ankush and everyone in Mumbai.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You're awesome. I really enjoyed my time with you.
We are awesome.
I have friendship.
Yes.